Clearly, most of it is driven by the increasing importance of e-commerce and online sales. And I think we've seen also in law enforcement that very much is focused on resolving some of the questions that still exist in this space concerning online sales restraints. And that then has, I think, also led the European Commission, seeing that national authorities have taken first steps in this area to try to re-establish its leading function in Europe and looking much closer into vertical restraints cases, and then of course also catching other areas other than online restraints. The key takeaway is that there is still a big gap between where Europe seems to be going and where the Germans think competition law applied to online restraints should move towards. I think in part it is because when you look at CODI and you look at the way also the European Commission has approached online sales restrictions, you didn't find really a step towards clear rules, towards clear principles that are generally applicable. Even in CODI, the court very carefully limits the judgment to luxury products, to the very specific facts of the case. And that has opened up a lot of room for authorities who tend to disagree with the way the case law is going to carve out their own spaces. So I think this difference between a slightly more permissible direction that European law is taking and the more restrictive view of the German Competition Authority and courts, I think that's the main takeaway from these two cases. That has become a challenge for in-house counsel. I think there are a couple of points that can be important in this area. First of all, I think it's keeping a tight control on your sales force. We've seen also in our own practice that many of the infractions in the vertical restraint space occur by salespeople who enter into formal or informal agreements with retailers who want to push their sales or meet their competitors in some space, and you end up with problematic agreements that are really driven by individual salespeople and not so much based on a company policy. So I think keeping a very close eye on that is one important thing. The second thing which we still see is that you have to be extraordinarily careful and watch out not to use general templates for distribution agreements on a worldwide basis. You have to be very sure that when you are in Europe, you tailor your distribution agreements to the legal environment that still prevails in Europe. And the third point, which I think is also very important, is you have to be very careful with particular restraints. So you have to spend time really adjusting to a particular country, to your particular product, what type of restraints as part of the risk assessment your company thinks is important to protect your brand, your product, and then to assess whether that's still an acceptable risk. Clearly, this is an area where you still have room for experiment. You still need to find your way of distributing a product in a way that's most effective to reach your customers. So it needs to be a very careful review to make sure that you remain within an acceptable risk area, but still protect the brand that you are promoting. For 2018, well, CODI was already decided, so we will leave this outside. I think what we discussed before, the German ASICS case really is a very significant development, because it shows again how the lack of unity within Europe enables some countries, like for example Germany, to push and create their own competition law applicable to online restraints. So the fact that both the Supreme Court, but then also in the aftermath, the German Competition Authority maintained their position and tried to maintain their view that there should be a much stricter regulation on online sales restraints, That has become the highlight of 2018, one thing that also in the meantime the Commission has reacted to. Clearly the Commission's review of the block exemption and the related guidelines, I think, will be the thing that will interest us the most in 2019, leaving about possible judgments, but that we don't know yet. And I think we'll see an epic battle between stakeholders. On the one hand, you will have the platforms like eBay, and on the other hand, you will have the branded goods manufacturers who will seek to ensure that they will continuously be able to market their product in a way that benefits their consumers the most. So I think that will be something that will play out in 2019. I think it's a great venue to have a 2-day session, or perhaps beyond if you go to the other events, where you really get a very systematic, very comprehensive overview of what's happening and what has happened in the past year and what may happen in the future year. And the way it's set up to really try to touch all possible areas is a perfect opportunity for someone to just take 2 days and try to really be up to speed on what has happened, not only in the area where you happen to be specialized, but really get a good picture on what's happening in the competition space in general.